What is going on, YouTubeverse? John Stanek from Johnny Radio here, bringing you my very first full ranking of an artist. And of course, it's the Beatles, my favorite artist of all time, probably yours as well, or many of yours. But, I've done a tier list of their albums already. I've done my top 5. So this may seem a little redundant, but I think in a way it's always nice to go through an entire artist discography from worst to best. And truly, there's not a bad album from the Beatles. Let's just get that out of the way. So when I say worst, we're just talking about the least good, right? But I'm going to go through all 13 studio albums right now in order of my worst to best ranking. So here we go at number 13. Yellow Submarine from 1969. I'm sure a lot of you will have this in the last spot as well, for obvious reasons. I mean, half of the album is kind of just soundtrack songs to go with a cartoon, so it's kind of silly in that way, but there's something very endearing about the album as a whole and what it's doing, essentially, going with this cartoon movie of the Beatles, which was really cute, and it contains some essential songs on here. Hey Bulldog, one of their most rocking songs ever. Just a brilliant track that I think is really underrated overall. And then you've got songs like All Together Now, which, again, kind of like a kid's song, but really fun for adults as well. I just love that track. And there's some duplication of certain songs on here, like Yellow Submarine, but it's all good, man. It's the Beatles, and you gotta love it, and that's my number 13. So now at number 12...
This happened once before, when I came to your door.
Beatles for Sale from 1964. Yeah, this is one that I just don't happen to revisit very frequently. A lot of their early stuff was good, and I'm sure at the time, I was born in 1978, so I missed Beatlemania as it was happening, but, I'm sure in 64, this was like a total one of the best albums to get, but comparing to the rest of their discography, I absolutely love No Reply. I think that's, just one of the best early Beatles songs, really well written. I love John Lennon's vocals on it. And really, there's not a weak song on this album. It's just not one that, as a cohesive album, I go back to a lot. And that's why it's toward the bottom of my list. But now at number 11...
It won't be long,
With the Beatles, their second album, and you're seeing a little bit of a pattern here. Of course, as I said, the early Beatles stuff, there's some great songs, All My Loving, of course. I actually love Ringo's song on here. I want to be your lover, baby. I want to be your man. There's just so much great, early revved up fun Beatles tracks on here, but again, not one as an album I go back to as much. Usually when I'm listening to early Beatles stuff, it's more of like a mix of different things. Mixing in with a lot of B-sides and singles like She's a Woman that was not on an album, which is just crazy to think. I always have to mention the Beatles, man, had so much great material that some of their just huge singles didn't even make it on albums, which is just, you don't see that kind of thing happening today. But this is the greatest band of all time we're talking about. So now we're moving on to number 10.
1, 2, 3, 4.
Please Please Me, the debut album from 1963. Yeah, I gotta give this the edge over with the Beatles and Beatles for Sale. I mean, so much energy right off the bat with, I saw her standing there, one of their best opening tracks really of any album. And then at the end of the album, you got Twist and Shout, which is just an amazing cover, and all in between, you got the title track, you got Love Me Do, I even love George Harrison's Do You Want to Know a Secret? It's of the early stuff, one that I come back to a bit more often, and that is why it is my number 10. So now at number 9, Magical Mystery Tour. Yes, gotta love this album. And some of you may be like, this is a little low, but again, this is the Beatles we're talking about here. And yes, I mean, I love certainly I Am the Walrus and Strawberry Fields and, Hello, Goodbye, all the hits off of this album, even like some of the gems like Baby, You're a Rich Man are fantastic. But then there's some tracks that I don't love as much, like Blue Jay Way and Fool on the Hill. As good as the song is, there's just some songs that don't really do it for me on this record. So cohesively, I don't feel like it's in their upper echelon, but hey, all you need is love, baby. And that's my number 9. So now at number 8, Rubber Soul from 1965. This was like, the turning point for the Beatles, going a tad bit more experimental with songs like Norwegian Wood and even like on In My Life, which is of course an amazing song, but the harpsichord solo done by George Martin on that track and them getting a bit more hands-on in the studio. But of course, you got other bangers like Drive My Car, and really there's not a weak track on the album, and that's really saying something because we're not even to like the exact midway point here to their discography. This is just, I guess, the best of the worst so far, which I can't believe I'm saying that because Rubber Soul is an amazing album, but it's only my number 8. So now at number 7...
It's been a
Hard Day's Night from 1964. Man, I love this album. It's really, to me, kind of like the pinnacle of those early albums. And of course, a film to go with it. Why not? It's such a fun movie as well. But of course, the title track, amazing. You've got Can't Buy Me Love. You've got If I Fell, I Should Have Known Better, just song after song. Just the songwriting here is incredible. The harmonies are incredible. It's the freaking Beatles, man. And just, Beatlemania was at its true height at this point. And you can see why, because it's just one of their absolute best. And now we're at the midpoint of this list. So now let's get to the very best of the best, starting with number 6. Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band from 1967. I know a lot of you are like, how is this at least not in your top 5? Well, guys, like I said, it's the Beatles and everybody's got their favorites. And, this one just didn't do it for me as much as I thought it would, especially listening to it for the first time, whenever that was back in the 90s when I really started getting into the Beatles. And, as much as it was ahead of its time, certainly, especially and psychedelic music in general, and them kind of going back and forth with, bands like the Beach Boys at the time for just innovation. There's not a lot of songs that I tend to go back to on here, aside from, of course, A Day in the Life and with a little help from my friends. But, the sound on this album, too, isn't like my favorite. I feel like they went a little too psychedelic in parts. Songs like Lucy in the Sky with Diamonds, as catchy as it isn't one of my favorites. And so for that reason, I know a lot of you are like, what's wrong with you? Like, this should be in the top 3 probably. But it's just, if I'm being honest about it, I love it. It's a classic. It's absolutely just a great album, but it doesn't make it that high on my list. So now we're going to number 5.
Let me tell you how.
Revolver from 1966. I give this a little bit of an edge over Sgt. Pepper just because, Eleanor Rigby, for one thing. I mean, just one of the most amazing less than 3-minute songs ever recorded. Talk about innovative. This is where it really went full throttle in the studio. George Martin coming into play on that track in particular with the quartet of strings, and then songs like Taxman, which is that amazing bass groove by Paul McCartney and guitar solo, by the way, and George Harrison kind of coming into his own as a songwriter. Not as crazy about the song Yellow Submarine, as fun as it is, but I mean, there's really not a weak track on here. all the way through to Tomorrow Never Knows, which is an amazing album closer. But yeah, if it's between Revolver and Sgt. Pepper, I like Revolver just a tad bit more. And now we are getting to number 4.
Help, I need somebody. Help, not just anybody.
Help from 1965. I know a lot of you are like, how is Help this high? But you know how I said A Hard Day's Night was like the pinnacle of those early Beatles days? This truly is for me. I feel like they had just perfected what they did those first couple years with songs like Help and The Night Before and You've Got to Hide Your Love Away, A Ticket to Ride. Every single song on here is masterful, and then culminating with Yesterday at the end of this album, which a lot of people say should close the album. I get it, but I even love Dizzy Miss Lizzy, man. Like every single song on this album I love from start to finish. It's just songs like I Need You by George Harrison, even Act Naturally, I Don't Mind by Ringo. Like every song has something different to offer, and I think it's brilliant, and that's why it's my number 4. So now at number 3, Let It Be from 1970. Again, I know some of you are probably like, how is this high? Especially with, some would argue that Phil Spector's production on this thing wasn't great. The Beatles themselves have separately said how they didn't like how this album turned out. This was technically recorded in 1969 prior to Abbey Road, but ended up getting released after the breakup of the band, essentially. And even Paul McCartney came in years later trying to clean it up and make it Let It Be Naked or whatever. But I love this album. I think every song on here, even the little interludes by Maggie May and Dig It are hilarious and just really show what Get Back showed us, that they were really having fun in the studio when they were making this album. And I think the songs are tremendous as well. Of course, Let It Be and Across the Universe, some of the best ballads the Beatles ever wrote and recorded, and then great rockers as well, like I've Got a Feeling. Of course, Don't Let Me Down didn't make it onto the original Let It Be, but that's my favorite Beatles song of all time. And that rooftop performance just shows you like they went out literally at the top of their game. Even though Get Back isn't my favorite Beatles song, there's so many Beatles songs that I love on this album. So many gems like Two of Us and Dig a Pony. Oh my God, every single song, even One After 909 is a throwback to the early Beatles days. It is one of the early songs that they wrote and kind of held on to in the back of their pocket and did for this record. And to me, it feels cohesive and fun and wonderful. And that's why it's that high on my list. It's my number 3. So now at number 2, The White Album. Absolutely one of the greatest double albums of all time. I mean, 30 songs and really none of them weak. I mean, okay, maybe Goodnight by Ringo is kind of weak and a weak way to end off the whole album. But nonetheless, it does work well as an album closer, especially when you have so many different genres of music. Like they literally threw everything but the kitchen sink at this album. And that's why it works so well, in my opinion. If they had really only done it as a condensed 12 songs of the best tracks off the album, it would have felt weird, I think, because Rocky Raccoon is completely different from Happiness is a Warm Gun, which is completely different from While My Guitar Gently Weeps. And, it's just odd going from one thing to the next. That's so jarring, that makes this so beautifully strange and wonderful. Even tracks like Revolution number 9, so weird, but it works in this context. And that's why I think the White Album is so brilliant and truly has some of their best songs. I mean, Dear Prudence, Helter Skelter, I could go on, but I love this album so much. It truly, when I was getting into the Beatles, which the first album that I truly listened to properly in order was Abbey Road, and this came right after, and this solidified the Beatles being the greatest thing on earth to me. And that's my number 2. So now at number 1. Abbey Road from 1969. I don't know how many times I've talked about this album on this channel. It was the very first album review I ever did. Plus, I did another one to mark the 50th anniversary of this album. I think it's just, as you can see, it's right here above me on the wall of perfect albums, and deservedly so. I mean, there is not a weak track on this thing. Every single song here is amazing. From the opener of Come Together to the Abbey Road suite that is just amazingly pretty much all of side B. Songs like I Want You, She's So Heavy, and Because, like these tracks that you may not think about as often are just so brilliant and beautiful. Then you've got the big hits like Something, which George Harrison at the top of his game here with that, and Here Comes the Sun. I've said it all. What else can I say? It's the Beatles. This is my list. And guys, let me know in the comments below what you think of my ranking. This took a little work to do, but I think it was worth it because it's nice to know, with an artist so good as the Beatles, there's really not a weak album, but some are weaker than others, and everybody's got their own opinion. So let me know yours. If you want to give me your entire ranking in the comments below, I'd be happy to check yours out and see what you like more than I do. The beautiful thing about the Beatles is everybody's got their favorites because it's all great, man. It is all wonderful, and they are the best band of all time. Come at me if you don't agree with that. But yeah, that's all I got to say for now, guys. And we got top fives every Friday, album reviews, so much more on the channel. Thank you for watching, and as always, Viva la vinyl. So guys, thanks so much for watching. Please like, subscribe, and be sure to ring the bell for notifications so you can always see great quality content like you're seeing on the screen right now. Thank you so much for supporting Johnny Radio, and I'll see you soon.